to AM 1160, properly social distance this morning with Senator Joe Pittman. Senator Pittman joins us courtesy of Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. And good morning to you.
Todd, good morning to you.
It's good to have you with us here today as we talk about a number of things. And at the top of the list today, the Independent Regulatory Review Commission earlier this week and its rejection of RGGI. In a way, I guess you could call it a rejection, but certainly they put some very big questions out there, didn't they?
Yeah, it's not a rejection per se. The way the process works is that the Regulatory Review Commission does just that. It reviews regulations and will often issue recommendations. I think it was atypical the way they issued their suggestions and how strong they were. Not only did they suggest that if you're going to go down this road, you better consider at least a one-year moratorium on it, but also they pointed out the issues that we've expressed concern over: transparency, the ability for people to participate in the hearings because they were virtual, the issues with the fact that all the other states that are part of RGGI, with the exception of one other, has done it through the legislature. And that's been our consistent theme, is that you have to have a collaborative process. And I think that they recognize that the process has been anything but collaborative.
Does the makeup of the Independent Regulatory Review Commission, the composition of it, who the members are, add more strength to their arguments?
It does, because it's actually a bipartisan commission. It's a 5-member commission that each chamber has 2 appointees and the governor has 1 appointee. So there are 5 members, and if you look at who appoints them, 3 are appointed by Democrats and 2 are appointed by Republicans. So it's certainly not a partisan commission by any means. And if you look at the 3 advisory commissions that DEP has that all rejected RGGI, they too are pretty bipartisan in their makeup.
I thought it was unusual how strongly worded it was, the directives to the DEP's commission, to actually the Environmental something commission. What is it?
It's the Environmental Quality Board.
Yeah.
I hate to get into too many acronyms, but it's.
But they directed them to explain how the governor came up with his decision unilaterally, and B, to explain how they, as an EQB, as a panel, have the authority to move forward with this.
That's right, because we're talking about taxation, and we're talking about this idea that hundreds of millions of dollars is going to be generated through this rule, and it's going to be paid by power plants if they emit carbon. And that, to me, is why candidly, I think we're talking about monopoly money here. The only way this money comes in is if power plants emit carbon. And if the objective of this rule is to reduce carbon emissions, then either we're not going to reduce emissions or we're not going to have money to address the community impacts that the governor claims he cares about.
Yeah, it's really an interesting thing. And the timing strikes me as well, because the moratorium would end on basically January 1st of 2023. We'll have a governor elect at that point who will probably go in the next day or the day after that. And so if we are tied to this and companies make moves because of this, we're already seeing impacts from other companies that say, we're not going to do business in Pennsylvania because it's going to be too costly. Is the damage done too much by that point? And will a new governor who might want to go in another direction or might want to go in the same direction, will his or her hands be tied?
Well, that's actually an interesting point, because a new governor could come in and repeal the regulation if it goes through. And so, we're dealing with whiplash. One day we have this rule in place, next day we have the rule repealed, and we have inconsistency in our policy. And that's another reason why the legislature, if they would truly involve us, and we pass a law that somehow puts us into this program, that it's there, it's consistent, and it survives whoever comes and goes within the office.
Surprise you that West Virginia joined into RGGI?
I don't think they did.
Yeah, I think they did.
Did they?
I read that the other day.
Boy, that's pretty surprising. If Virginia did.
Yeah, I heard
Virginia joined.
I read that West Virginia, maybe they were wrong. But
Yeah, I would certainly want to fact check that because
yeah,
I would be surprised if Ohio and West Virginia would join because they stand to benefit
yeah.
through this. I know Virginia joined, and you do see a new round of retirements of plants in
Hmm.
Virginia as a result of that.
Yeah, of course, the financial ramifications are tremendous. Representative Struzzi, yourself, still calling for the governor to actually get into the fray here and come to Indiana County and speak to the people who would be involved. Doesn't seem to be willing to do that.
Not really, but to the commissioner's credit, both Armstrong and Indiana County commissioners, in a bipartisan way, have been pressing for dialogue with the governor's office. And I believe they're making some progress on being heard. And I think that's really important. We need to be heard. We need to have a voice that makes it clear what the economic impacts are of these power plants. And I have to underscore too that it's not just about Reggie. The power marketplace has shifted and changed dramatically over the years. When you look at what happened in Texas and the terrible tragedy down there, to me, there's a lot of finger pointing going on. People are blaming windmills, people are blaming natural gas, people are blaming climate change. The reality is, to me, it shows that you have to have a very resilient and robust power grid that has a lot of variety in it. And wind has a place, solar has a place, nuclear has a place. It all has a place. But what it exposed in Texas about natural gas is that because it was so cold, natural gas was getting pulled out of the power grid and put into homes.
Yeah.
That's the first priority. And that's why you need a variety. Every source of power has a weakness. And the only way we overcome those weaknesses is to have a blend.
Yeah, that diversity is really,
Right.
really important. And if we're cutting one of the major components out of it, then that domino effect is going to be terrible.
That's
Feeling
exactly.
that in Texas this week, it's and
Yeah.
and it's going to be interesting to see how people react to that.
Yes. Yes, it will.
In some of the cold weather states, having seen it actually from what's considered to be a warm weather state.
Right. And if you look at what we experienced in our power grid, not only were we exporting power out of Pennsylvania to other states, but the 13 state power grid we're a part of was exporting power throughout the country.
Hmm.
We were exporting power into other grids that were strained in other parts of the country. And that was the other problem with Texas, is that they have their own independent grid, and so the grids couldn't feed off each other. But we were a major player in making sure the rest of the country didn't go the way Texas went.
Yeah. All right. We're talking with Senator Joe Pittman this morning, and it'll be interesting to watch with this latest development from the Independent Regulatory Review Commission,
Hmm.
what the next steps are in all of this. Meanwhile, next steps for you and your Senate colleagues will be Appropriations Committee hearings for the state budget. A little bit delayed in comparison to the House, which already got some of theirs underway, but that's coming up for you.
Yes, we'll be in session next week, and then our appropriation hearings will begin to occur in early March. And our chairman, Senator Brown, has spread them out this year. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And we get to see the House go first. We get to see what the department heads have to say to the House, and then we can look at that and build on it.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, we've been having hearings simultaneously, and it all kind of gets jumbled up. So I think this will allow us to be a little more precise in what we do with the hearings.
It's interesting to me when you watch these every year, when you have one party in the governor's mansion and you've got a different party in control of the legislative end of things. We naturally assume that that's an adversarial relationship. It doesn't have to be, though, does it?
No, it doesn't. And I'll give you a good example of that. The appointee for Secretary of Health that is replacing Dr. Levine, I know her personally. I worked with her under Senator White. She worked for the insurance department, and when Senator White was the chair of the Banking and Insurance Committee, we had a working relationship. And I find Miss Beam to be very thoughtful. She understands the process. She understands the Capitol. She understands policy. I know she's getting criticized for not being a medical expert, but I think we have enough experts in Harrisburg. We need people that understand how to get things done, and I think she does that. My only concern is that the bureaucracy will chew her up and spit her out, but I think she has the wherewithal to withstand it. but she's going to face some heavy criticism because of some of the decisions of her predecessor. But that's an example where I hope that we can come together and get somebody in a position in a productive way and move forward.
As the budget talks move forward, are you looking at the state system of higher education puzzle piece as one of the more difficult ones to figure out?
It is one of the most difficult ones to figure out, and because it's multifaceted. I've had conversations with AppScuff. I've had multiple conversations with Dr. Driscoll and many of the trustees at IUP. And the early retirement incentive that the state system just issued to employees, I think, is extremely important. We had a briefing from the chancellor, and he pointed out that there are 700 and some members of the faculty system-wide that are eligible for full retirement. And if those individuals retire, it more than offsets the retrenchment letters that are out there currently. And I think IUP has been very thoughtful. As I understand it, they've rescinded a good third of those letters. They've restored some of the programs, and so they're beginning to adapt. But we've got to get the universities open. We've got to get them in full operation. I was encouraged to see that the Edinburgh Clarion, California jointure is moving forward, and that they have made some statements about getting ready for full in-person learning in the fall, and I'm hoping that IUP follows suit.
Of course, the pandemic is going to have a large say in everything that you're doing in Harrisburg, and certainly in that as well. And so we've just got about a minute and a half left. I wanted to ask you about vaccine rollout. The states stumble this week, more than a major stumble, and,
Yes.
and how we can finally get this fixed and put shots in people's arms.
Well, we're at the mercy of the drug companies and the federal government when it comes to our supply. But we are responsible for the management of that supply, and we've not done a very good job. And part of that is managing the level of expectation. When the governor came out with his approach, 1A, 1B, and that whole listing, honestly, I thought it was a reasonable approach given the supply we had. But I think he felt pressure to say that, okay, everybody 65 or older is now in 1A, which created an expectation that wasn't achievable because we just don't have enough. I mean, we have 12 million people in this Commonwealth. With 2 doses, we need 24 million vaccines just here. And we have a fraction of that supply. Some of it is supply chain, but the bulk of it is we just don't have enough vaccine. But we have to become, and this is where I hope Acting Secretary Beam will start cleaning some things up. First of all, I appreciate the fact she came forward and told us the problem. That wasn't always the case. Secondly, I think she came forward with some authority and commitment to fix it. And now she has to follow through on that, and I hope she does.
Senator Joe Pittman, thanks so much for coming in and visiting with us today.
My pleasure, Todd. Thank you.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160. And it's 8:25.